Welcome to Galactic Nova Stories, where cosmic emotions come to life. Your journey begins now. She was sentenced to death, until the human she betrayed saved her. Part 1. The Betrayal. The data transfer was nearly complete when the door to Lyra's office slid open. Her four-fingered hand froze over the holographic interface, violet eyes widening as she recognized the human standing in the doorway. "Max," she breathed, her voice carrying the distinct melodic trill of her Novian heritage. Max Teller leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed over his chest. His expression shifted from confusion to realization, then settled into something Lyra had never seen on his face before. Betrayal. 2 years, he said quietly. 2 years we've worked together, and this is what you've been doing. The holographic display between them showed exactly what he'd caught her doing, transmitting classified United Earth Alliance defense protocols to the Novian Consortium. Her people, his enemies. "You would not understand," Lyra said, her silver blue, skin flushing darker with what humans might mistake for shame. It was not shame, it was frustration at being discovered. "Try me." Max stepped into the room, letting the door seal behind him. Lyra remembered their first meeting, 2 Earth years prior. As the first Novian diplomat stationed on the human homeworld, she had been assigned Max as her liaison. Initially, she'd found him insufferable, loud, emotional, and unpredictable like all humans, but slowly she'd come to appreciate his quick mind and adaptability. "My people need this information," she said simply. "The consortium believes your alliance is planning an expansion into the Rigel sector. So you're a spy." Max's voice was flat. All this time, the galaxy remained officially at peace, but everyone knew the Cold War between humans and Novians grew colder by the day. 2 species too different to truly understand one another, competing for the same resources across the stars. "I am a Novian first," she replied. "As you are human first." Max moved closer, studying the data stream. "These are defensive shield harmonics, planetary defense systems. Lyra, with this information, your people could penetrate Earth's defenses without warning. It is necessary for our survival." Survival. Max's laugh held no humor. "The consortium controls 3 times the territory of the Alliance. You have technological superiority in almost every area. Except adaptation," Lyra countered. "Your kind reached the stars centuries after ours, yet already you expand faster, colonize worlds. We cannot. It frightens the consortium, so this is about fear." Max reached past her, touching the holographic display. The transfer stopped. "You know I have to report this." "Max." For the first time, uncertainty crept into her voice. "I trusted you," he said, and the raw emotion in his voice made her flinch. Novians prided themselves on emotional control, seeing human volatility as primitive. Yet in that moment she envied his ability to express the pain she'd caused. The room's lights suddenly flashed red. Max had already triggered the silent alarm. "You humans are all the same," she said bitterly. "So quick to judge, so certain of your righteousness." The security team was already outside. She could hear their heavy footsteps. "Maybe," Max said as the door slid open behind him, "or maybe we just expect loyalty from our friends." The security officers entered with weapons drawn. Lyra stood tall, her expression composed as they approached. The leader spoke into his communicator. "We have the subject in custody." As they bound her wrists with energy restraints, Lyra kept her eyes on Max. "You do not understand what you've done," she said softly. "No," Max replied as they led her away, "but I understand what you did." The last thing she saw was Max picking up her abandoned data crystal, his shoulders heavy with the weight of her betrayal. The human courtroom felt cavernous and cold. Lyra sat rigid in the defendant's chair, refusing to show even the slightest discomfort, despite the 23 days she had spent in Earth detention. Novians never displayed weakness, especially not before humans. Ambassador Tellis, the most senior Novian official on Earth, sat behind her, not in support, but as an observer ensuring proper diplomatic protocol. The consortium had disavowed her actions immediately. The human judge spoke, her voice echoing through the chamber. This court will now hear final arguments in the case of United Earth Alliance versus Lyra Vex, diplomatic representative of the Novian Consortium, on charges of espionage and conspiracy against Earth. Lyra's eyes drifted to where Max sat in the witness section. He had testified yesterday, his voice steady as he described discovering her betrayal. He had not looked at her once. "The defendant may make a final statement," the judge announced. Lyra rose, her silver-blue skin catching the harsh courtroom lights. "I have nothing to apologize for," she stated. "I acted in accordance with my duties to my people." A murmur ran through the human audience. Their emotions played so openly across their faces: anger, disappointment, self-righteousness. How had her people ever considered these creatures a threat? Yet in just 3 centuries, they had spread from one world to dozens, adapting to environments that would kill a Novian in hours. "While your legal system requires my presence here, we all know this is merely theater," she continued. "Under the diplomatic accord of Centauri, I will be remanded to Novian authorities for sentencing according to our laws." The judge's expression remained neutral. "You understand that Novian law prescribes death for treason of this magnitude?" "I do." Behind her, Ambassador Tellis shifted slightly. The sound was imperceptible to human ears, but Lyra recognized it as discomfort. The consortium had already decided her fate. "Very well," the judge said. "This court finds Lyra Vex guilty on all charges. As stipulated by interstellar treaty, the defendant will be transported to Novian space for sentencing and execution of punishment." The gavel struck with finality. As the courtroom began to clear, Lyra finally allowed herself to look directly at Max. For a moment, their eyes met. What surprised her wasn't the anger she expected to see, but something worse. Disappointment, tinged with pity. Ambassador Tellis approached as the guards prepared to escort her out. "The transport leaves tomorrow," he said, his voice pitched low. "The High Council is most displeased." "I did what was necessary," Lyra replied. "You got caught," Tellis corrected. "That is never necessary." As he walked away, Max approached, flanked by security personnel. Protocol required a final verification of her identity before transfer. "I never understood your people's fascination with stoicism," Max said quietly, as he verified the biometric data on his tablet. "Even now, facing death, you show nothing." "Would emotional outbursts change my situation?" Lyra asked. "No." Max finished his work and stepped back. "But they might make you seem less alien to the people you've lived among for 2 years." As the guards led her away toward the holding cells, Lyra permitted herself one un-Novian thought. She had misjudged humans from the beginning. Not their technology or their politics, but something far more fundamental: their capacity to care. About betrayal. The door to her cell closed with hydraulic finality, and for the first time since her arrest, Lyra felt truly alone. The transport vessel, implacable, cut through the darkness between worlds, its hull gleaming under distant starlight. Inside, Lyra sat in the prisoner compartment, energy restraints humming softly around her wrists. The journey to Novian space would take 15 days at standard speed, 15 days to contemplate the execution that awaited her. Captain Renner appeared at the cell barrier, his weathered face unreadable. "We're clearing Earth's defense perimeter. Thought you might want to see your last view of the planet." The barrier field shimmered and became transparent, revealing the observation deck beyond. Earth hung suspended against the void, a perfect blue sphere wrapped in swirling white clouds. "Someone's here to see you," Renner added, stepping aside. Max entered the observation deck, dressed in formal diplomatic attire. Lyra couldn't hide her surprise. "You," she said. "Me," Max agreed. "Official. Earth representative for your transfer. Why would you volunteer for such a duty?" Max approached the barrier. "I requested the assignment." Captain Renner cleared his throat. "You have 15 minutes, Diplomat Teller. Security protocols remain in effect." After he departed, Max stood silently, studying her. Lyra found his scrutiny uncomfortable. "If you came to gloat, you waste both our time," she said finally. "That's not why I'm here." "Then enlighten me. Why would you choose to accompany the traitor you exposed?" Max's expression softened slightly. "I've spent 2 years trying to understand your people. I thought I was making progress with you." Understanding requires equality, Lyra replied. Your kind still sees mine as a threat to contain rather than an equal to respect. Is that why you stole our defense codes? For respect? For survival. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alarm. The ship lurched violently, throwing Max against the barrier. It sparked at the contact and he jumped back with a curse. What's happening? Lyra demanded, bracing herself against the wall of her cell. The intercom crackled. All personnel, impact damage in sectors 3 and 4. Unknown debris field. Stabilizers failing. Another violent shudder ran through the ship. The lights flickered, then switched to emergency red. This isn't good, Max muttered, steadying himself against a bulkhead. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated, sending loose objects floating momentarily before crashing down again. The barrier containing Lyra sputtered, its energy field destabilizing. Engine. Containment compromised, announced the automated system. Emergency landing protocols initiated. Max met Lyra's eyes through the failing barrier. Emergency landing? We're nowhere near a habitable Axton 3, Lyra interrupted. It's the only planet within range. Technically habitable, but in disputed territory. Neither human nor Novian. The implacable shuddered again, more violently this time. The barrier field collapsed completely. Lyra remained seated, making no move to escape even as her restraints deactivated. A fail-safe to prevent prisoner death during ship emergencies. Captain Renner burst in with Security Officer Pell. We're going down, he announced grimly. Impact. In 7 minutes, get to the crash stations. The descent was chaotic. Metal screamed against atmosphere. Through a viewport, Lyra watched the planet's surface rushing toward them, endless forests under a pale pink sky. The final impact came with a deafening roar. Lyra was thrown against the ceiling, then crashed back down as the ship came to rest. Darkness claimed her consciousness. When she awoke, smoke filled the compartment. A figure moved through the haze. Max, bleeding from a cut above his eye. Lyra, he coughed, kneeling beside her. Can you move? Yes, she managed, assessing her injuries. Nothing serious. Renner's dead. The cockpit took the worst hit. Pell's alive but injured. We need to get out before the power core destabilizes. Together they dragged the unconscious security officer from the wreckage. The planet's air hit Lyra's lungs like fire, breathable but harsh. Around them stretched an alien forest under an alien sky, with the smoking ruins of their ship the only sign of civilization. Your ribs are broken, Lyra observed, examining Officer Pell's torso. The human security guard lay unconscious inside the makeshift shelter Max had constructed from the escape pod's wreckage and local vegetation. Will he survive? Max asked, dropping an armful of strange fibrous material beside the shelter. I am not a medical expert, particularly not for humans, Lyra replied, but internal injuries seem likely. 3 days had passed since the crash, 3 days of uneasy cooperation born of necessity, 3 days in which Max had demonstrated why humans had survived their harsh homeworld long enough to reach the stars. Max knelt beside Pell, checking his pulse. So his fever's worse, without proper medical supplies. He left the thought unfinished. They both understood. The emergency beacon? Lyra asked. Still transmitting, but with the ionic interference in the atmosphere. It could be weeks before anyone picks up the signal. Lyra watched as Max expertly wove the plant fibers into cordage. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, as if he'd done this countless times before. Where did you learn such skills? She asked, despite herself. Max glanced, up briefly. Survival training is standard for all diplomatic personnel assigned to frontier worlds, but you specialize in adaptation, not just survival, Lyra observed. In 3 days, you've identified edible plants, constructed shelter, established water collection, all while caring for an injured man. And keeping an eye on you, Max added dryly. Lyra stiffened. I have made no attempt to escape. No, you haven't. Max tied off the cordage and set it aside. Which raises an interesting question. Why not? Escape to where? Lyra gestured at the alien landscape surrounding them. We are stranded on an uncolonized world. The truth was more complex. Lyra had been raised in climate-controlled Novian cities, engineered for perfect comfort. Her people had advanced through technology, not adaptation. The harsh conditions of Axton 3, the temperature extremes between day and night, the unfamiliar terrain were beyond her experience. Night fell quickly on this world, bringing bitter cold. Max built a fire with surprising skill, coaxing flame from friction and carefully dried materials. "You should rest," he told her, noticing her exhaustion. "I'll take first watch." "You do not trust me to keep watch while you sleep?" "Trust has to be earned back," Max replied simply. Later, huddled near the fire's warmth, Lyra observed Max tending to Pell's wounds. The gentleness in his movements contradicted everything she'd been taught about humans, that they were crude, aggressive, fundamentally violent creatures. The night grew colder. Strange calls echoed from the forest. Max remained vigilant, dividing his attention between their surroundings and Pell's deteriorating condition. "On Novia Prime," Lyra said suddenly, "we would consider this environment hostile to intelligent life." "Most environments are hostile to intelligent life," Max replied. "That's why intelligence evolved, to overcome environmental challenges. Yet your people thrive in conditions that would kill mine." "Not thrive, survive." Max stoked the fire. "There's a difference." By morning, Pell's breathing had grown shallow. Despite their efforts, the herbal poultices Max had created, the splints Lyra had fashioned, infection had set in. "He's dying," Lyra stated, watching Max check Pell's vitals again. "Yes." The single word carried weight. No denial, no emotional display. Simply acknowledgement of reality. "You knew this would happen," she realized. "I hoped it wouldn't." Max straightened. "But hope doesn't change broken ribs puncturing lungs." They buried Officer Pell that evening beneath an alien sky, using debris from the ship as makeshift tools. Max said words over the grave, a human ritual Lyra found unnecessarily sentimental yet oddly moving. As darkness fell again, bringing the forest's nocturnal chorus, Lyra found herself reconsidering many things she had believed about humans and about herself. "Tomorrow," Max said, "we need to find a more sustainable water source." Lyra nodded. Survival now bound them together more strongly than diplomatic ties ever had. Weeks passed, marking time through changes in the alien forest. What had begun as necessity, their cooperation, had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated. Routine, understanding, perhaps not trust, but something adjacent to it. "The trap caught something," Lyra announced, returning to their now substantial camp. Weeks of scavenging the wreckage had yielded tools, materials, and a surprisingly comfortable existence. Max looked up from the communications array he was attempting to repair. "Same as yesterday?" "Similar, smaller." He nodded approval. "Your tracking has improved." "I had an adequate teacher," Lyra admitted, setting down the furry, six-legged creature she'd caught. She still found the process distasteful, but survival required meat protein that local plants couldn't provide. Max abandoned his work and moved to prepare their meal. Lyra watched his practiced movements, the ease with which he adapted their limited tools to new purposes. Weeks ago, this would have reinforced her belief in human unpredictability. Now she recognized it as something else: ingenuity. "Tell me about Earth," she said suddenly. "Not the diplomatic version, the truth." Max's hands paused momentarily. "What do you want to know? How did your kind survive long enough to reach the stars? Our records show your planet experienced 5 mass extinctions before you evolved sentience. 6, actually." Max resumed his work. "We're stubborn, I guess." "That is insufficient explanation." Max smiled slightly. "All right. Earth is harsh. Always has been. Ice ages, supervolcanoes, meteors, climate shifts. Humans evolved not because we're stronger or smarter than every other species, but because we adapt faster. Through technology? Sometimes. But technology is just a tool. What matters is here." He tapped his temple. "The ability to see a problem, imagine a solution and implement it before the problem kills you." Lyra considered this. "The consortium believes this makes your kind dangerous. Unpredictable." "Does it?" Max asked, genuinely curious. Before she Good answer. A piercing screech cut through the forest. Both froze, recognizing the sound. The apex predator of this region, a creature they'd glimpsed only at a distance, with razor appendages and incredible speed. "It's close," Max whispered, reaching for the makeshift spear leaning against the shelter. Too close. The creature burst from the underbrush, moving faster than Lyra's eyes could track. Max shoved her aside as claws slashed where she'd been standing. He thrust with the spear, but the predator dodged with uncanny grace. Lyra scrambled for a weapon. As Max faced the beast, keeping its attention, the creature was twice his size, its exoskeleton gleaming. It struck again, catching Max's arm, drawing blood. Acting on instinct, Lyra grabbed the pot of boiling water from their cook fire and flung it at the creature. It screeched in pain, momentarily distracted. Max seized the opportunity, driving his spear into the junction between its armored segments. The creature thrashed, nearly taking Max with it as it collapsed. Then stillness. "Are you injured?" Lyra asked, rushing to examine his wound. "I'll live." Max winced as she cleaned the gash. "Quick thinking with the water. I observed how you assess weaknesses in prey animals," she admitted. The same principle applied. Later, as night fell and they huddled by the fire, Lyra found herself studying Max's profile. "I was wrong about humans," she said finally. "How so?" "The consortium teaches that human emotion is weakness, that your kind advanced despite your feelings, not because of them." She paused. "I no longer believe this is true." Max added wood to the fire. "Your people aren't wrong that emotions can be liabilities. Fear can paralyze, anger can blind. Yet when that creature attacked, you felt fear, but acted anyway. How?" "Because fear doesn't have to control action," Max explained. "It's information, valuable information about danger. What matters is what you do with that information." For the first time, Lyra understood something fundamental about humans. Their emotions weren't primitive evolutionary leftovers. They were sophisticated survival tools, honed through millennia of facing extinction. The realization was both disturbing and exhilarating. Everything she'd believed about human inferiority had been wrong. The emergency beacon activated with a series of sharp beeps, startling them both from sleep. Dawn light filtered through the forest canopy as Max scrambled to check the device. "Someone's responding," he announced, voice tight with excitement. "Signals coming from orbit." Lyra joined him, studying the readout. The beacon's small screen displayed approaching coordinates, a ship just entering the atmosphere. Her eyes widened as she recognized the signal pattern. "Novian," she said quietly. Max's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. 63 days of shared survival had taught Lyra to read his micro-expressions with unexpected accuracy. "Your people found us first," he said, stating the obvious. The moment hung between them, heavy with implications neither wished to voice. Their survival partnership had an expiration date, and it had just arrived. "They will honor the diplomatic protocols," Lyra assured him, unsure why she felt compelled to offer comfort. "You will be returned to Earth space." "And you?" Max asked, though he already knew the answer. "Back to your execution?" Lyra straightened, her posture returning to the formal rigidity of Novian diplomatic corps training. It felt strange after weeks of necessary adaptation. "Justice awaits all actions," she quoted from Novian teaching. Max turned away, beginning to gather their few personal possessions. "We should signal our exact position." The morning passed in strange, tense silence as they prepared for rescue. Lyra found herself cataloguing details of their camp. The ingenious water filtration system Max had devised, the comfortable sleeping pallets woven from local fibers, the drying rack for preserving meat. Evidence of cooperation that would soon be irrelevant. "Why did you come?" she asked suddenly. The question had haunted her since the crash. "On the transport. You requested the assignment. Why?" Max paused in his preparations. "I needed to understand." "Understand? What? Why you did it?" He met her eyes directly. 2 years working together, I thought I knew you. Then suddenly you're a spy who nearly compromised Earth's entire defense network. I couldn't reconcile those two people. "And now," Lyra asked, "do you understand?" Before he could answer, the distinctive whine of Novian engines cut through the air. A sleek scout ship, bearing the insignia of the Consortium Defense Force, descended into the clearing near their camp. Max shouldered the pack containing his belongings. "I understand more than I did," he said simply. The ship settled onto the ground, its ramp extending with hydraulic precision. 4 armed Novian officers emerged, weapons ready, standard procedure for unknown situations. They relaxed marginally upon seeing Lyra, but their posture stiffened again at the sight of Max. Commander Vax approached, saluting Lyra formally despite her prisoner status. "Diplomatic envoy Lyra, we received your beacon. The Consortium sent us to retrieve you." "And the human?" Lyra asked, gesturing to Max. "Will be transported to the nearest Alliance outpost as required by treaty." Vax's tone indicated this was a burdensome obligation rather than a courtesy. As the officers prepared for departure, Max and Lyra found themselves momentarily alone near the shelter that had been their home. "Lyra," Max said quietly, "whatever happens when you return, we both know what awaits me," she interrupted. "The law is absolute. It doesn't have to be." His voice dropped lower. "What you've learned here about humans, about cooperation, it has value. Your people need to hear it." "The words of a condemned traitor carry no weight," she reminded him. "Unless someone speaks for you." Before she could respond, Commander Vax approached. "It's time to board." As they entered the ship, Lyra cast one final glance at the clearing. For an illogical moment, she wished they had never been found. The journey back to civilized space was brief but felt eternal. Max was quarters at the opposite end of the ship from her guarded room. She did not see him again until they reached Novian space, where he would transfer to an Alliance vessel. As he prepared to depart, he paused before her, guards watching tensely. "Remember what you learned," he said simply. Then he was gone, and Lyra was alone with the weight of her actions and the knowledge that for the first time in her life, she had been completely wrong about humans. The judgment chamber of Novia Prime echoed with the soft hum of environmental systems. Lyra stood on the central platform, back straight, eyes forward, a final dignity before her sentence. Above her, 7 members of the High Judiciary sat in tiered seats, their silver-blue faces impassive. "Lyra of House Vex," intoned Chief Adjudicator Callow, "you stand accused of failing in your mission, exposing Consortium intelligence methods and bringing dishonor upon your house. Do you dispute these charges?" "I do not," Lyra replied, her voice steady. Callow nodded, satisfied with her composure, if not her actions. "Then by the ancient laws of the Consortium, your life is forfeit. Execution will... I request intervention. Under the right of witness." The unexpected voice silenced the chamber. Heads turned as Max Teller strode through the main entrance, flanked by startled Novian guards. He wore formal Earth Alliance diplomatic attire, his bearing confident despite being the only human in the chamber. "This proceeding is closed to Alliance representatives," Callow stated firmly. "Except when invoking the right of witness," Max countered. "As established in the Diplomatic Accord of Centauri, Section 12, Paragraph 4. Murmurs rippled through the assembled Novians. Lyra stared at Max in disbelief. The right of witness was an obscure provision, rarely invoked and even more rarely granted. After a tense consultation among the judiciary, Callow spoke again. "The right is acknowledged. Approach, Diplomat Teller." Max walked to the witness platform adjacent to Lyra's. Their eyes met briefly, his determined, hers questioning. "Speak your witness," Callow commanded. Max faced the judiciary directly. "I was the human who discovered Lyra's espionage. I testified against her in Earth courts. I accompanied her transport ship. I survived 63 days, stranded with her on an uninhabited world." "These facts are known," Callow interrupted impatiently. "What isn't known," Max continued, undeterred, "is that during those 63 days I witnessed a transformation that challenges everything the Consortium believes about both our species." The chamber grew utterly silent. Lyra entered that forest believing humans inferior, emotionally undisciplined, technologically primitive compared to Novians. She leaves it understanding that emotion and adaptation are not weaknesses but strengths. The defendant's philosophical journey is irrelevant to these proceedings, Callow stated. It's entirely relevant, Max argued, because it speaks to the value of her continued existence. One of the junior adjudicators leaned forward. Explain. Lyra possesses unique insight into human nature, insight no other Novian has. She has seen firsthand how we adapt, how we survive, how we think. This knowledge could be vital to preventing future conflict between our peoples. The penalty for her crimes is absolute, Callow reminded him. Then I invoke the substitution of consequence, Max declared. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even Lyra couldn't hide her shock. The substitution was an ancient Novian custom, rarely mentioned and even more rarely attempted. You cannot, protested one adjudicator. You are not Novian. The Accord extends such rights to diplomatic representatives, Max countered. I accept personal responsibility for Lyra's future actions. Her achievements become mine. Her crimes become mine. Lyra found her voice at last. Max, you cannot do this. If I betray the Alliance again, you would share my fate. I know. His eyes met hers. But you won't. The judiciary called for recess, leaving Max and Lyra momentarily alone in the chamber, though guards watched from a distance. Why? She demanded, her voice barely above a whisper. Why risk your life for mine? Because what I learned about you in those forests is as valuable as what you learned about humans, Max replied. You're capable of change, of growth. That makes you worth saving. The consortium will never agree to this, Lyra warned. The substitution has not been granted in 7 generations. Then it's about time, don't you think? Max's confidence seemed unshakable. Besides, I've read your histories. The substitution was created precisely for cases when strict justice might eliminate valuable perspective. Before Lyra could respond, the judiciary returned. Their faces remained impassive, but something in their posture had changed. Callow spoke first. The judiciary has deliberated on the humans' unprecedented invocation of the substitution of consequence. While tradition demands rejection of external interference in our justice, wisdom demands recognition of changing times. The chamber held its collective breath. Lyra of House Vex, your sentence is commuted. Instead of death, you will serve as cultural liaison to Earth, under the supervision and responsibility of diplomat Max Teller. Should you betray either of our peoples again, both you and the human will face execution without further proceedings. Lyra's legs nearly buckled beneath her. Commutation was unheard of for crimes of her magnitude. As the chamber emptied, Max approached her platform. Breathe, he advised quietly. It's over. No, Lyra replied, meeting his gaze. It's just beginning. Earth's skyline looked different to Lyra now. The towering structures of New Geneva, once symbols of human architectural inferiority, now represented something else entirely. Monuments to adaptability. 6 months had passed since her return, each day a lesson in humility and growth. The consortium representatives are waiting in the conference room, Max reminded her, checking his tablet as they walked through Alliance headquarters. Are they still requesting exclusive mining rights to the Procyon system? She asked. Naturally. Lyra smiled slightly. Then they will be disappointed. Her new role as cultural liaison placed her in an unprecedented position, neither fully trusted by humans nor embraced by her own people. Yet this middle ground gave her unique perspective. She saw opportunities for cooperation, where others saw only competition. You seem calm, Max observed as they approached the conference room. Last time you met Ambassador Tellis, you nearly overturned the refreshment table. I was still adjusting, Lyra replied primly. Besides, he deliberately provoked me by suggesting humans lacked the intellectual capacity for quantum navigation. And now? Now I understand that his ignorance reflects poorly on him, not on humans. She paused before the door. I have learned patience from your kind. Max raised an eyebrow. Humans, paragons of patience, that's new. Not patience in the moment, Lyra clarified. Patience across generations. Your people plant trees knowing they will never sit in their shade. Mine build only for the present. The meeting proceeded better than expected. Where once Lyra would have automatically supported consortium positions, She now spoke difficult truths to both sides. Some called her traitor still, others called her visionary. She had learned to accept both labels with equanimity. That evening, as she reviewed reports in her office, an urgent message flashed across her screen. The automated translation faltered over certain technical terms, but the meaning was clear. A stellar anomaly threatened both human and Novian colonies in the Epsilon sector. Within hours, an emergency summit convened. Representatives from both civilizations argued bitterly about resource allocation, evacuation priorities, and defensive positioning. "This is pointless," Lyra whispered to Max as the debate grew heated. "While they argue, millions remain in danger." Max nodded grimly. Classic tragedy of divided response. Neither side trusts the other enough to coordinate effectively. Lyra stood suddenly, interrupting the Novian science minister mid-sentence. All eyes turned to her. "We face extinction arguing about who deserves to survive," she declared. "I have lived among humans. I have seen their adaptability, their ingenuity in crisis, and I know my own people's technological precision and long-term planning. Apart, we are vulnerable. Together, we might survive this." Silence filled the chamber. "I was sentenced to death once," she continued. "A human saved me by accepting responsibility for my actions. Perhaps it is time our species showed similar courage." The debate that followed lasted 16 hours. By its end, the first joint human-Novian emergency response fleet had been authorized. Lyra, having earned unique trust from both sides, was appointed coordination liaison. 1 year later, as the last evacuees from the affected systems reached safety, Lyra stood on the observation deck of the Alliance flagship Unity. The stellar anomaly, now contained by Novian technology guided by human intuitive problem-solving, glowed softly in the view screen. "They're calling it the Lyra Protocol," Max said, joining her at the viewport. "The emergency response framework you developed. It's being implemented across both territories." "It wasn't my work alone," she demurred. "No," Max agreed, "but you were the bridge that made it possible." Lyra considered the irony. Her greatest mistake, betraying Earth, had led to her greatest purpose, helping both civilizations recognize their complementary strengths. "What makes humans special isn't your technology or even your adaptability," she said finally. "It's your capacity to forgive, to see value in second chances." Max smiled. "Maybe that's what makes any sentient species truly advanced. Not conquest or technological supremacy, but the wisdom to see beyond past wrongs toward future possibilities." Outside the viewport, stars stretched endlessly before them, no longer divided into human or Novian territories, but simply worlds waiting to be understood together.